Welcome back, everyone. We have finally managed to get the Hangprinter going. It has been a while. It has been quite the effort. So in this video, we kind of want to go over what went well, what kind of didn't go so well, what improvements we'd need to make, and what the recommendations would be if you want to build one for yourself. Again, thanks to Trinamic for sponsoring this video series. It has been a blast. So should we just go over the basic kinematics of the Hangprinter one more time, just for everyone who's still uncertain about how things work exactly? I guess it was somewhat theoretical to show it off of a pile of parts, so let's start right here. So behind you, we have the actual mover that is now floating in midair, and I gotta say, this looks quite freaky seeing it like that. So it's probably going to be hard to see on camera, but this mover is suspended by a set of 3 strings that go straight up to the ceiling unit, and another set of 2 strings going to each anchor down there. So you can see one of the anchors back there, and there are 2 more anchors on the bottom, and those 2 have strings going all the way up to the ceiling. And all the motors for these kinematics are actually situated up on the ceiling unit. So with this sort of setup, how large would we be able to print actually?
Oh, we would be able to print like out here, a couple of meters wide, first layers, maybe 20 centimeter up, and then you will have a trumpet shape swinging in like this, and up like at 1 meter, 1.5, you will have this cylinder-like shape that you can print in.
Yeah.
All the way up.
So a basic benchy, I guess you could print large enough to fit in there, maybe, kind of, yeah.
Just starting here, in there.
Alright, so benchy probably 2 meters long, roughly. The 2 limitations for build size are going to be these lines actually touching the print, so at this height, they're about right there, so we have like a 40-50 centimeter radius. As we keep moving up, these lines are going to get steeper and will eventually touch the print. As the lower you go, the wider that area is going to be. So you could print a disc probably 4 meters in diameter.
Yeah.
And as you get taller, it's going to be a bit more restricted.
Yes, if people want to print much bigger, they need to use longer beams.
So one of the questions that kept coming up in the live stream chat questions was, how can you scale it up? Can you scale it down? Can you make this smaller? Can you build it in the smaller room? Can you build it in the larger room? And you can definitely do that, right?
Yes, the answer is yes to all these questions. You can scale it up, you can scale it down, and the principle will be exactly the same.
Now, if you want to see the full build procedure that we went through with, starting from assembling the mechanical parts to doing electronics to doing all the debugging that we ended up doing actually, you can watch all the live streams, but like, what are the things that we ran into? It was mostly not Hangprinter specific issues, right?
No, those were the good old RepRap problems.
Yeah.
All RepRaps have bad connectors, bad power supplies.
We did go through a few iterations of the parts. The original plan was to use a RAMS 1.5 with Trinamic TMC 2130 drivers, which was actually almost what we ended up using. So we switched out the RAMS 1.5 first because that one had faulty thermistor 0 and extruder 1 outputs.
Extruder 0.
Then we switched out the TMC 2130 because we thought we weren't able to initialize them with your firmware.
Yeah.
Yeah, turned out that was just an issue with a wire harness, so we swapped out the wire harness, or re-crimped that, repressed that.
Yeah, we also dropped Bluetooth during that time because we suspected something was wrong, but probably Bluetooth was working.
But as it turns out, yeah, Bluetooth is probably the least of our issues. I still don't trust it.
No.
So Bluetooth, we went with a really long USB cord, which you can probably just barely see hanging from the ceiling here. You can see it on that camera. Yeah. You can see that hanging down right there. That's our USB cord hanging from the ceiling, power cord, and the ribbon cable that actually drives the motor for the extruder, hot end, thermistor, and the fan. We went with that 5 meter long USB. Apparently worked just fine.
It did. I'm surprised.
So in the end, we ended up using a set of TMC 2130 drivers. We are using the E3D Volcano with the copper nozzle, which is actually working out really nicely. It seems to be able to transfer a lot of energy into the filament. We did switch away from the E3D Titan extruder because I don't know, it's either me having it assembled wrong or something in the extruder not working all that well. It was losing steps as we were getting further into the print. So that didn't work. We have a Bondtech BMG on there right now. and that is working beautifully. What actually did work out pretty well was this file line string. I mean, it is still amazing how rigid this feels just being suspended in mid-air like this. Yeah, it boggles the mind to a certain extent. And this dark fire line that is kind of hard to see. I tripped over this thing, what, 15 times at least during the prints? Yeah. So that is something that's not great with these. So this is the 0.5mm one. You can use the 0.39 one.
Yeah, and those are fluorescent, so you will see them more easily, and they will work just as well.
Now, surprisingly, most of the mechanical parts on the Hangprinter actually worked out pretty great. They worked first try.
We had some problems with layer adhesion and like cracking in the plastic parts.
Yeah, I did use some old filament. I should have known. I used that before. It didn't work out great. That was the OE3D Edge. That was apparently a pre-production sample that they had sent me. Should have remembered.
But it still worked out, so it wasn't that sensible.
Yeah, so it worked out well. Zip ties to the rescue, wherever you can use them. So that's definitely something you can do, even if the parts aren't that great.
If you have wooden beams like we have, you can just use wood screws directly from above.
Screw it into the corner brackets, and that's going to make it really rigid. So as we moved to getting this thing actually printing and assembled and done, the calibration that we did, that we just measured out where the individual anchors were, how high everything up was from the floor, that actually seemed to work out pretty great on the first try.
Yes, it did. It may have seemed like it took a lot of time, but compared to what I expected, we were about twice as fast.
Yeah. Take your time with it. It is worth it to really measure everything accurately. And how far were we off overall, like in the sanity check?
Sanity check showed 1 centimeter off.
That's as good as you've gotten before?
Yeah.
Cool.
That will allow you to print like 1.5 meters, maybe tall.
And that's actually what we ended up doing. So with this very printer, we ended up printing a really nice Christmas tree in Tom's 3D Blue. So overall print quality was actually surprisingly nice. I'm always surprised by how nice large layers turn out. And with the 1.2mm nozzle and the layer height that we used, it actually ended up looking almost as good as on any other printer, if not even better, because everything is so lightweight on here. It is really fantastic how accurate and precise this thing can be in the end. But some of the questions that I guess a lot of people have is, can you actually print smaller things with this Hangprinter?
It doesn't make sense except for maybe calibrating, showing off.
Could you print a benchy at 1:1 scale? Not with this nozzle obviously, but if you used a regular nozzle.
If you print like 4 benches really slow, then maybe you will get the tallest part without making sauce.
So one of the things we actually ran into is that this printer does not have a part cooling fan. We did end up using a fan, just a standing fan, to blow over the part. That is something you can really easily add to the mover. Those are options that the community can add. What are the next steps for the project for you? What are you going to focus on?
For me, I think that I will make iterative improvements to this design and focus on trying to document it, trying to help others build it. I will not dive into making another new iteration out so people can get the time to actually build this and use it.
And one of the many suggestions that we got and that we actually discussed was moving the electronics away from the ceiling, because that turned out to be somewhat bothersome if you have to do any amount of debugging. Moving them down from the ceiling again, mounting them to maybe one of the anchors and reducing the amount of lines that are going to be hanging through the room. And it all has its up and downsides. You could definitely modify this design to fit your needs. In this case, this is the official one.
Yeah, I happen to like enjoy getting the printer out of the way and just retract it to the ceiling. But with that amount of electronic debugging that we were doing, I would like the electronics to be on the floor.
So in our case, this is what we built, but of course you can make your own modifications to this design. You can build your version however you like. And again, that's what we're hoping to achieve here. Getting more people involved with the project, moving it forward, and maybe someday it's going to be its own thing.
Maybe someday I can go into another project.
Yeah. One question that also came up quite a few times was, how much did this printer cost? And with the parts that we used, I guess it is under $200, but if you were to make some compromises on the extruder and hot end, which is actually the bulk of the investment we made because we wanted to have really good components here, that is what's limiting the performance of the printer. I guess you could build it for less than $100 if you made some shortcuts.
Less than 100, then you are doing many shortcuts.
We're not saying that the cheaper one is going to be easier, and we're not saying that this was an easy build, but you could do it. It's not out of the question. Because in the end, these are all the same components that you would use for a cheap i3 clone. These are all standard parts except for the fishing line and the bearings. The rest is the exact same parts for this printer?
Yeah, no linear rails.
Yeah, and as I understand, they can actually book you if they want to have a workshop or want to build one for themselves in a larger project, right?
Yeah, I'm willing to show up, bring some parts, and show people how to use and how to build hang printers.
So if you enjoyed this video series on building the hang printer, give it a thumbs up. Get subscribed if you want to see more like it. You can support this channel on Patreon with a pledge of just $1 per month. Patreon actually rolled back their insane fee change, so that is a big thumbs up. If you want to discuss this project, there is a good way to do that, and that is the Tom's 3D forum, also linked below. If you want to follow Torbjørn, you can do so on Twitter, Bounty Source, and on the blog. And yeah, that's it for us for the Hangprinter project. It was a lot of fun. Thank you guys for following along, and we'll see you in the next one. Okay, good.